you're saying that like, oh, people are having less children, that's a bad thing, but I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. And the reason why, at least from what we see when we compare better developed countries to less developed countries, is that people are choosing to have fewer children, but they're choosing to invest more in those fewer children. So back in agricultural times, people had to have a lot of children because they had to have those children work in the farm, basically take over chores, take over a bunch of stuff. So they would have 7 or 8 children, a lot of times malnourished, a lot of them died, versus now where it's like, okay, they might have 1 or 2 children, but those children are well fed, they're getting well educated.
They're getting all the best psychiatric
home.
Drugs in the country.
Well, do you think that, okay, I guess here's the other problem. Earlier on, we were talking about like, hey, you know what, things are getting better measured now than before. That's why the whole thing about like, oh, people are less happy now is not necessarily true. Do you think that, let's say, middle of nowhere country in Africa or something, where they're malnourished, have a family of 7, do you think those people are happier because they can't report it? Or they're living technically more of a traditional lifestyle than like somebody in a Nordic country or European country?
Yeah, I think the word traditional is doing a lot of work there. I agree that, sub-Saharan Africa and Oklahoma are different, but I don't think it's a totally fair comparison. And I agree it's better to be nourished than to be malnourished. I agree with that as well. But I don't think that one necessarily needs 2 lawyer incomes and a Tesla and a big screen TV and 5 iPhones to be able to thrive and flourish. I think we've become far too materialistic, and we now know the price of everything and the value of nothing. So we've got more money than ever, but we're all miserable.
Wait, when you cited the data on the 2-parent households, but socioeconomic status and education, especially maternal education, are big predictors of childhood outcomes. So how come the data on two-parent households, we should follow that, but not the one on...
I'm fine with women being smart. I like when women are smart and well-educated, because they're raising my children, One is raising my children. I'm not... If I were living in Africa, maybe I'd have 5...
This is where you deviate from the red pill.
Right, true. But, it is said that the hand that rocks the cradle is the hand that rules the world. So when a man chooses a woman to be his wife and to raise his family, he is entrusting her with his life, so I don't think he wants her to be a dummy or to be vicious or to be anything like that. He would have no incentive to do so.
But it's better to have fewer kids that you can, it seems like, provide more for and make sure than to have 10 kids and none of those kids end up being or flourishing.
I think it's good to be open to life. I think that one of the big problems in our society is that we've embraced sterility. So we're sterile intellectually, artistically, philosophically, and literally. We don't have any kids, and we exalt as some kind of supposed political right sterile forms of sex. So I wouldn't recommend that at all. And I think when you get married, to my earlier point, you're giving yourself wholly over to another person. And so you shouldn't withhold anything. You should be totally open to life for the unity of the spouses.
Is that practical in modern society?
I
feel like you have a very idealistic view.
Oh, no, I think I can tell you from experience.
Well, you're
it's
very
totally
successful.
Practical.
You're very
you.
successful. You're not struggling to feed your kids.
I'm not. I haven't been totally canceled yet. That's true. But I know people who make less money than I do.
I have
a lot less money, and they've got a million kids, and
Here,
they're very
Pixie,
happy.
you go ahead, and I will shift gears a little bit after you go.
Okay, I just have some points of clarification quickly. So if you believe that people should be like open to life, do you believe basically should we have like universal child daycare? Do you believe that we should
No, I think we should have mothers and fathers.
Okay. Do you not, if you're talking about how women should be more traditional or stay at home more, but you agree that our current economic circumstance doesn't necessarily allow for that household, it seems to me like one potential solution to this would be like, hey, you know what, better paternal and maternity leave. So then that way, like the household doesn't suffer the income, but the woman can go.
I support 18 years of maternity leave. I think, forget about 18 months. I think it should be 18 years.
Paid? Do you believe women should be paid for staying in the household?
In principle, I'm not opposed to it. The problem is it would create so many bad incentives and it would be so inefficiently managed by the central government.
Well, 18 years.
But you wouldn't.
18 years would be tough. But in principle,
maybe have at least something.
But to your point, in principle, look, there's one country in the West that has managed to turn around the birth rate problem, and they haven't solved it yet, but they've ticked it up a little bit in the opposite direction, and that's Hungary. And the way they did it was they said that once you have 4 kids, you don't have to pay income tax anymore. And that's a great way to encourage people to have kids. So, I'm not sure.
I don't disagree with that.
Would I suggest that we just start sending checks for each baby that you pop out? That's probably an overly simplistic way to do it. But should the government, which is really an expression of the people and self-government, should we encourage and support having families rather than passing laws that discourage families. 100%.
Yeah, I'm for pro-family policy. I think we all are.
Yeah.
Pixie, did you have more?
No, I was just trying to see if you agreed with that or not, because I've met a couple conservatives who are like, oh no, we shouldn't pass laws like that. So
Yeah, well, the libertarians get feisty any time you say that we should do anything in politics. But no, I'm fine as long as it's prudent. The point that you raised at first, though, would be terribly wrong, which would be to say, all right, now we've got guaranteed daycare. That would only make the problem worse, right? If we want families to be stronger and we want families to be incentivized to have more children and to raise their own children.
Sorry, I do have one more thing. I
Yes.
guess what I don't understand is that earlier you were talking about the community. The community is important. Like liberals are like too individualized.
Yeah.
But to me, it seems like programs like universal daycare or such of the matter do foster a sense of community. I don't think a child was meant to be raised by just one single person, like not even just a mom.
Nor
it's
do
meant to
I.
be
I
raised
think,
by
I
the
think there's at least
community.
2 people involved.
Yeah, I think more. I think we live a whole
Community,
society that,
Right.
should take
So-
care of the children.
Yeah. So your insight is, or your inclination is right, which is, it takes a village. Much as I dislike Hillary Clinton, that phrase itself is not objectionable. But it takes a village. It doesn't, I don't think it takes a contrived product of some technocracy that creates the, sterile and clinical preschool program, daycare program. That's not a real organic community. That's not a community where people are accountable to one another, where people have natural bonds that begin with the family and extend to the extended family and then to the neighborhood and to Mrs. McGillicuddy down the street.
How would you because religion has done a really good job at this, creating these fostering these communities, but the bottom line is people just don't believe in it. There's a question if it's beneficial and if it's true. What's your plan to convince more people that it's true and that they should follow it? Because everything is pointing the opposite way. We're going the opposite way.
Beneficial means is good, and true means is true. And some people think these are divorced. I don't think they're divorced. Well, I hold to an old-fashioned view that there are the 3 transcendentals, which is goodness, truth, and beauty, and that they involve one another. So something that is good is likely to be true, and something that is false is likely to be harmful.
Okay. What makes you believe that that Catholic doctrine is true?
Well, I believe, to quote the First Vatican Council, that the existence of God, I'm not saying all the other stuff, but the existence of God can be known with certainty by natural human reason from the created world.
Yeah, I'm not debating about the existence of God. I'm saying specifically Catholic doctrine, that it goes
Right.
beyond
So
just
if we
existence
all
of God.
agree that God exists and can be known through reason, and maybe we're making a leap there, but you seem at least to
Definitely
grant
a
it.
leap.
But at least you grant it. Then the question is, okay, well, who is God? And here is where revelation gets involved. And
But is revelation not just
Why not the Viking god?
Wait, is revelation not just like the word of somebody else essentially claiming to like have these truths revealed by
it's
God?
the word of a great many people played out throughout history. So, for instance, it was very recently Christmas, and so the revelation of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ is in the incarnation, and then he lives for 33 years, and then suffers a passion, is crucified, and is resurrected on the 3rd day. At least that's how the story goes, right? Well, why would I believe that story? What reason do I have to believe? That's a crazy story, isn't it? People don't just rise from the dead. Well, part of the reason I might believe it is because the gospel accounts were all written within living memory. A part of the reason I might believe this is because 11 men went to their deaths to defend, a fable? To defend 11 men just all suffered the same defect of perception. One of the reasons I would believe it is it's attested to in non-Christian history. One of the reasons I might believe this is that there were 500 witnesses to the resurrection. So, and then another reason I might witness this, which gets to your point of the relation between goodness and truth, is that religion spread to the entire world, and we haven't even gotten into the other historical coincidences of this, and led to a civilization that was extraordinarily powerful, flourishing. I mean, nothing like it has ever existed on the face of the earth, and never would again if it were to go away. This would all seem to point to at least some little kernel of truth in that.
I guess
Final thing, and then I will move on. Go ahead.
Final thoughts on that. To me, it doesn't necessarily follow that just because like a lot of people believe something, it means that there's a kernel of truth to it, right? I feel like
not necessarily.
Yeah, it seems to me that the same arguments that you used could be used when it comes to like trying to justify Islam, for example. That a lot of people have gone and fight and died
Islam
for.
didn't spread peacefully as Christianity did.
But yeah,
The fastest growing religion, so isn't it?
yeah, it's still the fastest growing religion right now. But the point that I'm trying to get across is that ultimately it seems like your belief in the Catholic faith and doctrine goes back to like, hey, a lot of other people seem to believe this, so then that leads to
perhaps
me
I
believing it's
perhaps I
kernel truth.
misspoke.
Quick response.
Yes,
if you-
Okay.
a quick version of it. Perhaps I misspoke. My faith in the Catholic religion comes down to the existence of God being knowable through reason and the identification of God with the Logos. This would be something different than, say, in Islam, where Allah is totally transcendent. And as Ibn Hazm, the medieval Islamic writer, said, if God so willed it, he could make people worship idols. So mine identifies God with reason. So it's not just mere hearsay. Then there is a little bit of hearsay because all these people saw it and believed it and spread it throughout all of the world. And the religion was extraordinarily successful. And in that spread, one final difference, I suppose, is that with maybe two exceptions, Christianity spread peacefully everywhere that it spread. The two exceptions would be Charlemagne and I guess the Spanish Inquisition.
Yeah.
With Islam spread violently everywhere that it spread. And so I'm not even knocking the Muslims, I'm just pointing out one was reliant largely on reason, and so it would seem to me that the faith is reasonable.